Moving on with the vocal processing, I loaded up Golfos. Here, basically the reasoning is pretty much the same what the previous was in the case of using this particular plugin, which is that there were certain like resonances and etc., which I just couldn't really tame in any other way. With Golfos on vocals, however, is like something that I've realized like exactly in this past year or so, that Golfos can, so in the pursuit of trying to achieve this like kind of like perfect tonal balance, it might go against the character or like the tone of certain singers' like voices, if this makes sense. So I'm a little bit more how do I say this? Like I'm a little bit more careful whenever I'm using Golfos on vocals. Like so even if I load it up, because even if I like feel that there's, because even if I like see that there's no other way of creating an issue, I might be focusing on like in just a much narrower range. So to make sure that I'm only affecting the really truly things which are like kind of like problematic, and I'm leaving the rest without any processing, because otherwise it might affect the vocals a little bit too much, and things might just end up sounding a little bit like unnatural. And after Golfos, I loaded up Soothe 2, which is a mainstay in pretty much all of my vocal processing chains, because it just does something that pretty much no other plugin can like really do it the same way. And yeah, so basically I start out in almost all cases with like the flat start preset. This is what I have, so this is how it loads up by default. And then with vocals, generally speaking, I'm gonna try to get the attack as low as possible and a little bit faster release, like a little bit slower release, but so not slow, but not at like essentially the knob won't stay at 0, because this is what's going to sound a little bit more natural in my experience with vocals. Honestly, in the case of this particular plugin, it's like there are so many options, and you realize so many things with time. You know, the more you use this plugin, the more you realize how much it can help, but also how destructive it is if you use it wrongly. Because it has happened to me a few times that I you know, it's like when you wake up the next day and you listen back to what you did the previous, it's like you realize, oh my god, what did I do with the vocals? So this is one of those plugins that can like completely wreck things, but it can also like save very seemingly unsavable situations too. It really just depends on whether you can whether you have the experience to find the right settings to use it. Now moving on with the vocal chops, I think at this point I realized that you know, when I was looking for a counterpart for the pluck, which was bent to the left, these vocal chops were bent to the right. But I still went with a different option other than reverting back the pluck, because I felt that the significance of these vocal chops are just a little bit, you know, so they are more significant than the plucks. So even though the plucks are bent left and these are bent right, this will come. You know, this is always going to be much more noticeable. So instead of creating the stereo width by reverting, I decided to leave the pluck how it was, and instead apply pretty much the same processing to the vocal chop as well, to make it like to move it more into the middle, and then to make it move from left to right with pancake. And so this is what I'm gonna do here. And also on this point, just identifying resonances. I think Pro Q3, or now that Pro Q4 is out, but it's pretty much the same thing in terms of this capability. Finding and notching resonances is like super easy, because it's very visual. So if you have the option to set the resolution to high, or like I don't remember how it's called, like ultra or something like or maximum maybe. I really don't remember how it's named. But the point is that you know, you can zero in all these resonances that might be a little bit or like even more like kind of like bothering, and you can just notch them out if there's anything like this. And yeah, after this procedure is just a matter of finding the appropriate level for it. So because we've changed up the stereo balance, and after removing the resonances, obviously the perceived level of it will also change. And so at this point, what I felt would be appropriate to do here is to compensate for like moving the signal into the middle and narrowing it, and then to with EQ, not only just with the level, but also to make the sample a little bit more still wider, but both left and both in the right directions. And instead of using something which would just widen what's already there, I instead loaded up the Ozone Imager 2, or like you can use other Ozone products, or like probably there are other manufacturers which have plugins which are capable of doing the same thing. But the whole point here is that they have this option to stereoize, and what this is doing is that this is widening the signal, but in a kind of sort of like in an artificial way, which keeps the mono signal intact. So what this like really means is that the signal will remain monocompatible, but there's going to be like a left layer and a right layer additionally. And I pretty much almost always use the first stereoizing setting. This second one I'm not as much of a fan of, although it works based on the same principles, but it's a different algorithm, and I just don't really like the sound, how it sounds. But this first one is just amazing in almost all situations, especially on like vocals and even basses. This is what I would use if I needed to widen up a bass while keeping it in mono compatible. And now the last step was to do what I talked about earlier, which is just basically to reapply the same thing what I did with the plugs, is to make the vocal chops also move from left to right, but it's the same idea. Now this would be possible to do manually too with automation, and in certain cases I would do that, but because here I wanted to have this kind of like a little bit like this pumping effect anyway, I went with using sidechain compression. And what I did is I linked the vocal chop level against the lead vocals, because I felt that in this part where they are playing together, they were just a little bit like competing for the same space, and it was just the vocal chops were masking the lead vocals, which is the exact opposite of what I want. So I want the lead vocals to stay in the focus, while the vocal chops are should, well, not that really, they shouldn't really drop out. They should like still be in the background, but they should be in the background instead of climbing on top of the lead vocals, or making certain phrases unintelligible, or like you get the point why I'm doing this. And this is the visual representation as the lead vocals are playing. The vocal chops are dropping out for those parts. Now, ideally, in the case of clicks, or like so this is the case with every like vocals or like other instruments which are recorded live. So guitars, saxophones, really anything, where there might be possible like clicks or pops in the recording, and ideally these should be taken out at the part where the signal is still dry, because this way there's the reverb won't be affected by the click, the delay won't be affected by the click, and all the processing that you do won't also process the click, won't bake it into the material. But because I only have access to the whole stem, this is where these declicking plugins can come into the rescue. In my experience, these RX plugins are the best for the job, but there are also many other manufacturers, many other type of plugins which are pretty much doing the same thing, which is that you can set the sensitivity, how sensitive you want to go with the reduction, and here you can also set different algorithms, and you can even specify like more whether it should listen more towards the higher frequency ranges to tame those, or like the lower frequency ranges to tame those. And here I just spotted a few clicks which I wanted to remove here, and this is what I did exactly. Now about the vocals, the same procedure what I did with the vocal chops. Sometimes I'm going to spot certain resonances which are either like out of key. So this note is not out of the key itself, but it's very very much out of place in the context of most of the chord progression. So I decided to tame it for the whole duration of the vocal dynamically.